We are live on Facebook now. We are live on Facebook now. We are live on Facebook now. Stop. One. 7. 4. Mom, we need to meet everything guys. I need to what? Co-host. Standing in the water. Yeah, as soon as we start, we need to pull that down. Yeah. Okay. Mom, what about your Facebook? Fancy. No, nothing. I was just listening to something that I was you know what's something, right? No, that's not everything. Yeah. You can start. Hello, everyone. Da-da-da. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Well, I can hear you.
Hello, welcome on board. I'm trying to see if I can see everyone. I can only see 3 faces. Okay, thank you, Dr. Bomo. Welcome on board. Yeah, Reverend, okay, I can see you now, Auntie. Dr. Ajayi has joined as well. I'm yet to see his face. If you can hear me, please kindly turn your video on. Thank you. Thank you for coming, joining us. Thank you. Yeah, it's gone past 6 o'clock, and we know the time is precious. We just like to do a quick intro, and then I'll hand it over to Reverend Lade, who is going to be facilitating the whole of the workshop. My name is Kemi Tomide Johnson. I'm the chair and CEO of Klimax Family Home. Klimax Family Home is an organization that was put together about 7 years ago, mainly to support parents in order for them to be able to raise sound, well-rounded children, if there's anything like that. But at least in the face of what we see in the community, what is going on in terms of crime, in terms of children not doing well academically, especially within our community, the bad press, the issue of mental health, domestic violence, as what we are going to be looking in today. Sadly, I heard the news this morning of a lady called Barbara, who for some reason, she's been undergoing domestic violence. And even though a lot of people have tried to intercede and, get her some help, she kept going back and back, and the family could not get her off. Eventually, the husband left her a threat when the family took her off the man forcefully, that he was going to kill her. And unfortunately, she got killed yesterday. 7 bullets on her way to work. And that ends it for Barbara. And this is why some of this topic, when we hear things like this, is heartbreaking. Not many people will end up like Barbara. And not many people will get killed in the process. Not many people, some people have like permanent life scar. Some people's scar are left on the kids. You can imagine what the children, from what I read, I think she left behind 4 children. So you can imagine the trauma that they will be left with for the rest of their life. So it's not just something that we should take for granted, not just as leaders within the community or within our profession, but as individuals and parents in our homes. It is something that we need to take very seriously, that when things like this come up, especially within the religious organization. I'm sorry to say this, but back to what we discussing at the lab workshop, the husband unfortunately happens to be a pastor. And it felt like that's on being pastor, imam, or a clergy person, a doctor, or a lawyer, or what have you, does not immune that somebody cannot be a perpetrator or a victim. If you understand, we are all human beings before we become something. So it is most important that regardless of the office we hold, regardless of the certification or what have you, we know that domestic violence affects anybody. And so it's nothing of a shame to come forward to seek help. And I can't reinforce that enough. And I'm hoping that all the experts we have on board tonight will be able to shed more light into ways we can seek help, how we can actually identify this thing and seek practical solutions to our problem. Because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to be able to actually know what to do. So tonight we're going to be emphasizing more. We've dealt with what domestic violence are, the signs, the traits, and everything. But tonight, how can we actually seek help? What can we do if we find ourselves or someone going through a domestic violence environment, and then with the children, the adverse effects and the trauma that the children that are found in the domestic violence settings, what they experience, children being abused, their parents and everything. What can we do as individuals seeing these things or experiencing it? What can we do to actually help one another? And that's what we're going to be talking about lightly tonight. And I'm just saying kudos to everyone on board. I'll leave Reverend Ade to do the introduction of all our speakers. And I just want to say, please feel comfortable, enjoy the evening. And if you have any question or areas that you feel that you need some clarification on, please do ask questions. And at the back of this is, I want to say that at Klimax Family Hub, we have a mentoring scheme. We have some kind of help in place that we could help you get on your feet or get the right information. And so if at the back of this, you feel like you really need that help, you need that stepping stone, or you want to talk to someone confidentially, we have people who are specifically trained to do this for you. And trust me, they will give you like 40-minute session to listen to you and get you. And if there's a need for you to get further help as well, they will be there to signpost you and work with you all the way. So please don't keep quiet. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's better to be safe than sorry. If you need help, seek help. I'll leave the details. You can reach info@klimax.org.uk, or you telephone 078 974 74114. At the end of this program, you will be signposted safely in a safe way, and you will get the right support that you need. Thank you very much. I don't want to take too much of our time. I'll hand it over to Reverend Ade. Thank you. Do what you know how to do best. Thank you.
To myself. Thank you so much, everybody. And I'd like to say thank you to those of you who are watching on Facebook. Thank you for those who have returned, who are in the studio with us. I like to call this studio, it's a veteran of the studio, people are those who are inside the Zoom room. But it's equally as effective as if you're watching up on Facebook, or if you're going to watch this now or watch this later. Last week was absolutely information-packed. The fact that we had the presence, we had the delivery and the presentation from Dr. Bomo Olatokunbo Francis. She went into details about defining what domestic violence is, what the signs are, and also some things to look out for within the family. We, of course, had Dr. Ayodele Ajayi, who is a consultant psychiatrist. Dr. Bomo is a consultant psychiatrist as well. And I believe very strongly that both of them are in very good stead to talk about this topic. They thrashed it thoroughly last week. We're going to talk a lot more today. We're going to talk a lot more this week about domestic violence, the impact in the community, the impact in the home, And it is so apt that Kemi just gave a very fatal and very unfortunate incident that happened yesterday. I mean, reading that story, I actually cried in my inside because I felt there is a lot that could have been done. We're all out there in our community. If there's a sister, it is a brother, it is a father, it is an uncle, it is an aunt somewhere that is experiencing domestic violence. Oftentimes, people don't want to talk about it so quickly. So, it's about us learning how to intervene and also when to intervene. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. But for those of you who are online watching us on Facebook, I'd just like to remind you, if you have any questions at any stage during the presentation, please feel free to just type them down on the Facebook page. And for those of you who are in the studio with us, if you have any question, you've got the chat section, you've got the chat buttons just right below. If you type your question there, we're going to take them up later. Of course, last week we also had Peace Ngozi Raji. She's a social worker. She's an AMP, very experienced in working in the area of mental health, and she's also a consultant social worker as well. She gave a presentation about her work in the community. I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to what we're going to be discussing today. And of course, you had myself. I wove in and out the conversations, actually. My name is Lade Olugbemi, and I'm the convener of an organization called News Organization. And what we do is to train people to become mental health first aiders, and would raise awareness through seminars, conferences in our community, particularly about mental health. It is really, really urgent. It is really, really pertinent. It's a topic that we cannot afford to keep pushing to the back. We need to talk about it now, more so with the pandemic. And of course, a lot of us know the after effect of the pandemic and even the in effect of the pandemic. I would not want to take too much of our time. We're going to go into the same order that we had last week. We had a presentation from Dr. Bomo, who is a consultant psychiatrist, like I said, and she spoke last week on domestic abuse, domestic and family violence, and the impact on children's mental health. This is often an area that we neglect. We often concentrate more on the victim. But there's what we call vicarious trauma, and I believe that the two psychiatrists that we have in the house today will be talking about what vicarious trauma is the fact that, yes, the person may not have exactly been the one in the eye of the storm experiencing the domestic abuse, but they're attendant, there are other people. I gave some statistics last week, and I'm going to repeat those statistics again. It is the sisters, it is the brothers, it is the auntie, it is the colleague at work, it is the neighbor that heard or that hears each evening a woman crying, shrieking for help, and nobody is there. It is the colleague at work who sees another colleague coming weepy, being snappy at work, and colleagues at work don't even exactly know what is going on with that person. So we have, I believe we have good time to discuss this matter. One thing I always say is that we cannot continue to run away from information because we cannot deal with what we do not know. So if we do not know the signs that a colleague or a neighbor may be given if they experience domestic abuse, how do we step in to help them? Okay, now you know that they experience domestic abuse. When do you step in to help them? We're going to talk about all of that later today. So fasten your seatbelt. We're on a very good ride for the next 90 minutes or so that we have. It's very much information packed. And don't forget, as we go along, if you have any questions, just type them down because we might not be able to stop to answer the questions whilst the various presenters are delivering their presentation. I'm going to hand you over now to Dr. Bomo Olatokunbo, who is going to go further and expound more on the topic she started last week on domestic abuse and the impact on children's mental health. Over to you, Dr. Bomo. It's okay to give her a clap. I know we're in the studio. It's okay. A smile, a thumbs up. For those of you in the studio, for those who are on Facebook, it's okay to clap. Those little GIFs that we have, those widgets. It's okay. The floor is yours, Dr. Bomo.
Hello, good evening once again, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. I think my topic is a bit different from what you introduced. It's understanding anger and the emotional tools that abusers use in an abusive relationship. Hello?
Hello, go ahead. You have the floor. Please go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
So
I stand
in view of what,
corrected. You corrected me. So I took that on board.
in view of the recent happenings in America of the pastor that abused and killed his wife, even though there were lots of warning signs, like our conveyor, Kemi Klimax said earlier, no one was there to help her. She was offered help, but she didn't take up the help available to her. And from what we can see, the husband, because there are lots of videos going viral on Facebook and WhatsApp, the husband was a very, very angry man. So today, what my topic is understanding anger and other emotional tools that abusers employ in abusive relationship. So the first thing we want to talk about is, what is anger? Anger is, we know anger is an emotional state, and I'll try and hurry up because last time I was a bit out of time. And it can range from mild anger, mild irritation to intense fury. And anger is it's a healthy emotion, because sometimes when you're angry in the positive way, if you're angry, you get things done. But we're talking of when anger is in the negative way and it's out of control and has impact not only on people around us, on our family, society, and we get into trouble with the law. So anger is an emotional state which can vary in intensity from mild irritation to intense fury. It can be caused by both external and internal events. And we know that, I'll come to a slide later, I'm not sure if the slides are coming up, that we need a certain amount of anger to survive. Because it's to be angry is a healthy emotion. So I'll go straight to the anger iceberg. The anger iceberg was developed by Goffman Institute, which represents the idea that anger is an emotion displayed outwards, but there are other emotions hidden underneath the surface, which causes the anger. So it might be out of frustration. We don't know if this, I'll keep referring to this recent topic. If the man was frustrated, if he was worried, if he had financial problems. I'm not giving an excuse, but there's so many emotions behind anger. So it's our internal response to an external stressor. Sometimes we can't really, it can be anxiety, fear, frustration, worry, guilt, embarrassment, hurt, jealousy. And so how do we know if someone is angry? We're going to talk about the physical signs of anger. When someone is angry, from their facial expression, you can know that the person is angry. The person will clench his fist. Sometimes they're sweating, they're shaking, they're trembling, which is what we see as the physical signs of anger. And we'll also talk a bit about what are the effects of anger on us or on anyone. First, on our physical health, there are lots, and there's so many numerous studies that have been done that when we're continuously angry, we're operating on a high level of stress and can make us susceptible to heart disease, diabetes, and even a study in America shows that it can weaken your immune system. Mental health, chronic anger can cloud our thinking, can make it difficult for you to concentrate, cause stresses and all other mental health problems. On your career, when you're continuously angry, when you're at work, you don't have work colleagues who want to talk to you. So you're sometimes ostracized because they will know you as that angry man. On relationships too, what can that be? On relationships, when you're constantly angry, that can affect your relationships and make your partner very uncomfortable and can also lead to domestic abuse, which is our main topic. So I'm just going to hurry through the emotional tools abusers use in an abusive relationship. It's called power and control. So they want to, first thing I always stress that if you're in an abusive relationship, or if you're in immediate danger, call 999 and leave immediately. I know it's difficult because we've seen in the video going around how even Barbara's brother came to try and get her out of the situation, but she kept going back and making excuses for her husband. Also, if you know someone who's in an abusive relationship, let them know that you've noticed something is wrong and support them as best as you can. Sometimes people will try and go back, but like we say, we try and offer support and tell them there's help out there, that it's not a stigma. Abuse anyone can be in Barbara's position, but it's how we react to what has happened to her, or how we take the abuse. So we're talking about a bit of power and control. I don't know if you can see the slides.
No, your slides are not
showing.
Do you want to share your screen? Do you want to share your screen, Dr. Bomo?
Okay.
Yes,
let me try and share my screen. Okay. I'll connect. I don't think I can share the screen now. So it's called power and control. So which way? How does the abusers, emotional tools the abusers employ in abusive relationship is called the power and control. I'll try and share these notes later, but now I can't see how to share the screen. So they use emotional abuse, they put the person down, they isolate the person, try and threaten the person, controlling what they do, and say sometimes they use the children, or if in relationships where they're children, they'll say, if you leave, I'll not let you see the children. They'll treat, sometimes they use privileges that say, use intimidation, emotional abuse, isolating, controlling who you see. Then they minimize the behavior and tell them, oh, you're too sensitive. What is it? I just slapped you. Is that a big deal? It's not a big deal. So they minimize and blame. After all, it's your fault. It's because you did this when I told you not to do that. So let me try and share this because it's a very good slide, which I would like to share. So sometimes they can use withholding funds. Okay, if you don't do this for me, or if you don't agree to do this, I'm not going to give you money. Or they keep asking, what are you spending the money for? Where are you going? Why are you wearing this? Or even they can use coercive control and threats to control. Those are the tools the abusers can use, the perpetrators can use for victims. The other thing I need to talk about, which is very important, is that what are the warning signs that people see in relationship, and that warning sign says, pick your bags and run. Don't stay anymore. Intimidation. The partner will try and control every aspect. And this includes, it can be actual, verbal, or physical. Or the person will try and isolate you, say, I don't want you to talk to your mom, or isolate them from your friends. I don't want you to talk to your friends. I don't want you to talk to your family. They are the one influencing you. It could be physical threats, controlling the partner, verbal abuse, oh, look at her, you're too fat, you're too big, you're too black, you're too white, you know, and sometimes they make jokes, look at her. You know, there's so many ways. These are the red flags you see, and you need.
You are muted, Dr. Bomo. Dr. Bomo, I think you've muted yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Let's see this last time.
Oh, we can see your slide now.
Can you see the slides?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I was talking about the red flags in a relationship, what you should see. Sometimes can you see the slide?
We can see the slide and we can hear you.
Okay. So early warning signs with people in relationships, the red flags we're talking about. The person, the perpetrator might be very jealous and say, oh, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, very bad-tempered, controlling what you're wearing. Sometimes you see that they're cruelty to animals, although in our culture, I'm sure we don't see that too much of a problem. But that's when you see someone who's very cruel to cats, dogs, you know that they'll be cruel to a human being too. Demeaning the victim in public and in private. I mean, you might be out with your friends, both of you might be out with your friends and starts talking down on you or trying to bring you down in front of your friends, embarrassing or humiliating you, and extreme controlling behavior. Makes all the decisions. You are not allowed to spend more than £10 today. You're not allowed to go out with your friends. Tries to control every aspect of the person's life. And so the victim now walks on eggshells. You sometimes, if you're in that kind of relationship, when the phone rings, if your partner is at home, I can't talk now, he's at home. Things like that. There are little things you can pick up, or when he comes into a room, or when you're with someone and the partner or the person they're in a relationship comes into a room and can't talk, or starts using sign language, or shh, I can't talk, they're around. Do something about it. I've spoken a lot about a bit about anger. So, and what do we know when how do we help someone with anger? So I'm talking about dealing with anger. First of all, like we said, anger it's the outward expression of things you're dealing with internally. So the first thing is try and explore what is behind the person's anger. Anxiety may mask, anger can mask anxiety. It might be learned. It might be, oh, I've seen my dad slap my mom 200 times, so it's normal. So they see it as a normal thing. And that's what we're talking about, children. What they learn from us, the primary givers, the parents. It's not what they learn in school, it's what they learn in the home situation. And you can also find out that anger may also be a symptom of mental health problems. I'm talking about trying to deal with your anger and try to recognize that you're an angry person. So people, when they start becoming angry, they can have signs like knots in their stomach, breathing fast, they clench their fists and their jaw, they start pacing, they start wandering, they start becoming very agitated, headache, pounding headache. The first thing is to try and identify your triggers. If you know that in certain situations you become more, and try and identify triggers. And the other thing is to learn to control your anger. I know it's easier said than done, but what I normally tell my patients is that if you're angry, first thing, try and breathe deeply. Try and breathe through to your stomach, deep breathe in and out. If that doesn't work, try and do what you enjoy doing. If some people will say, I like dancing, listening to music, try and do that. Get moving. Try and unclench your fist. Do simple exercises, maybe walk up and down or go for a run, go for a jog, anything you enjoy doing to try and learn and let the anger come out in a positive way, for a better way of discussing, of explaining. So if like, we should also find a healthier way to express your anger. If, for instance, you're very angry, try and resolve it in a positive way. Try and resolve what is causing the anger. And like, I know we have to focus on the present. Be willing to forgive. I know it's difficult, but I'm not talking about when someone is beating you or smacking you every time. I'm talking of generally how to deal with anger. Stay calm, take care of yourself, make sure you sleep 6 to 8 hours, talk to someone, try and exercise, and be smart about drugs and alcohol. Sometimes drugs and alcohol, they're not
5 minutes more, Dr.
positive
Bomo.
in
Dr. Bomo, you've got 5 minutes more. You've got 5 minutes more.
Okay. So what is anger? I spoke a bit about how to deal with anger. So what's anger management? Sometimes we ask people to go for anger management. And what is anger management? So anger management, it's a way of teaching you a psychoeducation to understand why you're angry and trying to help you to deal with the anger. It helps to reduce the emotional feelings and psychological arousals that can occur in someone that is angry. Helps to teach you how to control your reactions, which I've spoken a bit about: deep breathing, walking, counting up to 10. If that doesn't work, count forwards, backwards, slowly. And if it's exercise, and do what you enjoy doing. So you have to identify the trigger, know what you can do to calm yourself down so that the anger doesn't come out the wrong way. So the process of learning to recognize when you're angry. So some people will say when they're angry, they sweat from their head. I've heard someone tell me that their palms become very sweaty. So you have to, when you, then you know you're becoming, it's building up. Like last time I was talking about the cycle of abuse, you know, it's building up. So you try and deal with it before it comes out the other way. So last one I'll talk about briefly is just healthy ways to relax. Like I said, anger is a natural and a normal emotion. It's when it's uncontrollable or when you're finding it difficult to control your anger, and it affects your life, not only your life, it affects other people in a negative way. And that's when we think there's a problem, or we know there's a problem. So what are the healthy ways to relax? Deep breathing. I've spoken about deep breathing, and I keep telling people deep breathing is the easiest thing. You don't need any machinery. You don't need any tools to do that one. It's just you. Just learn to do deep controlled breathing. Learn to relax. If you're tense, try, if you're clenching your fist, try and unclench your fist. Go for walks. Do simple exercises like rotating your arms around. And the other thing, which is very helpful, is that when you do this, write down. I'm someone, if anyone who knows me, anything, I write down a lot. Write down what made you angry. And if you minutes later, read what you've written and think, will this thing make me angry tomorrow? Will it make me angry next week? So see the context and ask yourself if you will be angry again. So thank you for listening, and to my short talk about anger, knowing the signs, the red flags in a violent relationship and what to do. Like I keep saying, if you're in an abusive relationship, the first thing is calling 9 if you're in immediate danger, confide in someone. I said before, every 30 seconds, the police get a phone call about someone in danger. Confide in someone who you trust and you're comfortable with. Report the abuse to the authorities. And if you know someone who's in an abusive relationship, let them know you know and let them know you care. Sometimes people just say, oh, no one knows. But we see the little signs when you see someone who's being abused. Support them as best as you can. Sometimes, even with the support, they still go back, but continue to tell them you're there for them. And sometimes you can offer to encourage them, or encourage them that you accompany them to report to the authorities, because sometimes all they need is someone to follow them there, or someone to encourage them that I will be with you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bomo. Okay, you can stop sharing now.
Stop sharing your screen now.
Yeah, you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, can we give Dr. Bomo a round of applause, please? If you can't do it physically, you know, if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a reaction there. Well done. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. I like the fact that you dealt with anger, because oftentimes most perpetrators have issues with anger that are not touched. I know that one of the key areas that I talked about last week is the fact that, yes, we're talking about victims. Victims need to be protected, but do you know that at the same time, a lot of perpetrators have issues and they do things that are kind of quote and unquote out of their control, because some of them are dealing with undiagnosed mental health issues. Can I ask us all to please mute our devices? Can we all please mute our devices? Whoever the host is, can you please mute everybody except me? Because if you mute me, you'll be able to hear me. Can we kindly mute our devices, please? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I like the fact that Dr. Bomo, you've touched on anger. Anger is one thing that a lot of perpetrators suffer from.
I'm so sorry, please.
And some of them. Okay, can we please mute our devices? Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen in the house. And some of the perpetrators actually have undiagnosed mental health issues. And I know that there's one key area that the next speaker is going to be talking about, not exactly key, but it's going to be mentioning about personality disorder and how personality disorder actually interfaces with some of the experiences that perpetrators have gone through. From my little work in the community, I do know that some perpetrators themselves have been victims of domestic abuse. Oftentimes when you sit down and you listen to their stories, it's either they were abused as a child, it's either they were bullied, it's either they were bullied either in the organization or one way or the other. I'm not saying for all of them, neither are we trying to justify or make excuses for perpetrators, but I'm saying there's a need for us to make sure that we put the necessary intervention in place. Because yes, you may remove a victim from that perpetrator if we do not deal with the root cause of what triggers the perpetrator off from doing whatever he does. We'll find out that there's a repeated behavior and there are victims all over the place. Victims all over the place being cultivated by this perpetrator. So I'm one person who advocates for interventions for people who maybe, and peradventure there's somebody watching us out there on Facebook or whenever you're going to be watching this, and you know that you have issues with anger, and your anger is very uncontrollable. Yes, you hit your wife or you hit your child the other day, and you did not mean to. You know, you've done it and you just totally so, you feel so bad in yourself. Can I ask that you please go and speak with your GP to be referred for anger management? There are lots of anger management courses out there. There's so many that you can get support from. You need to do it before you find out that the next time that you explode with that anger, that there are dire consequences for them. And that is why the kind of program we're having today, this conversation today, is really key. We cannot sweep it under the carpet any longer. Yes, they are victims, but there are perpetrators who are cultivating those victims. And there are also some other things that we're going to be talking about low self-esteem. And I need to mention this a little bit. Some of the signs, some of the emotional signs of domestic abuse is when a person has very low self-esteem, when the person feels that the abuse that have been perpetrated against them is their fault. So you burnt the stew, your husband came home or your partner came home, and he's been so hungry and he wants to eat, and it's like he comes home and he's so annoyed with you and he slaps you. And you think, well, it was my fault. It was because I burnt the stew. It was because there was no food at home. So you blame yourself. You do not need to blame yourself. It is not your fault. No man, no woman has the right to hit a man or to hit a woman. And I do need to balance that. I know that last week, for those who were with us last week, you heard the balance we put in the house. Is the fact that we recognize as well that women abuse men. We recognize that. And men abuse women. However, we recognize the statistics that about 90% of domestic abuse are perpetrated by men. But we do not want to discard that 10% that is perpetrated by women, and also perpetrated by colleagues, by friends, by institutions. There are different types of abuses. And for us, I want us, yes, we're talking about domestic abuse today, but I'd like us to just walk a little bit outside of that domestic abuse and go outside into the community, because this program is for the community. It's a fact that there's also institutionalized abuse. There's organized abuse. There's there are neighborhood abuse, especially when you live in a neighborhood where you know that you're not very much accepted, and then your neighbors gang up against you. It is a form of abuse. We're going to talk about that later, but I'm going to be handing you over now to a very eminent consultant psychiatrist. He was on the platform last week, and he did a very good justice to the topic. Today he's going to be talking about the impact of adverse childhood experiences. I know that I've mentioned a little bit about the fact that Do you know that some of those perpetrators themselves, they've been victims of abuse? Would probably have some questions around this. Dr. Ajayi, is a consultant psychiatrist, like I said, is the impact, he'll be speaking to us on the impact of adverse childhood experiences, including bullying on mental health. What is the impact? So I hand you over. Please give a round of applause to Dr. Ayodele Ajayi. Thank you.
Good
evening. Good evening.
All right, good. I can see you can all hear me. Good evening. Once again, thank you, Klimax, for putting this program together. And thank you for the work that you do in the community, and thank you for inviting me to speak. So far, Dr. Francis has done a good job telling us about the tools that abusers use against to perpetrate abuse. And so I'm going to be following on that.
Wait, can I just mention that you have 20 minutes? So yeah, just mention that you have 20 minutes.
Right.
Thank you.
So I'm going to be following on that, talking about the adverse childhood experiences and how that impacts on mental health. And we'll make a link soon, because one will be wondering that what has adverse childhood experiences got to do with domestic violence? But Reverend Lade has very kindly actually started by making those links, that a lot of the people who are perpetrators of domestic violence have themselves been victims of domestic violence or victims of some sort of abuse in the past. It might not necessarily be domestic violence. It might be other forms of adverse childhood experiences. So to start with, let's just paint the picture again, because I usually use these statistics anytime I talk about children, about mental health, and about adults. The World Health Organization tells us that 50% of mental health problems would have developed by the age of 14, and that 3/4 of them, that's 75% of those illnesses, would have developed by the mid-20s. Now, the interesting thing again is that 1/3 of all those mental illnesses actually have a link to what is called adverse childhood experiences. So the question is, what are adverse childhood experiences? Adverse childhood experiences are any form of trauma that occurs to a child during their formative years. And so any trauma whatsoever that occurs, that a child experiences before the age of 18 can be deemed as an adverse childhood experience. And before I go ahead to name the common types of adverse childhood experiences that there are, I also want to say that what the research shows is that the more the number of adverse childhood experiences that a child has, the higher their risk of becoming unwell. And we're also going to talk about the different types of consequences that adverse childhood experiences result in. So really, we are saying that the more the number of childhood experiences that a child has, the higher their risk. And it's not just risk of mental health problems, it's also the risk of physical health problems in future, and it's also the risk of their ability to be able to function in society. And that's what links us to personality disorder, which I'm also going to mention. So what are the groups of adverse childhood experiences that we've got? We've got abuse, and we've talked about abuse we've talked about abuse last week, and or 2 weeks ago, and we're talking about it again now. So that's physical abuse, calling children, being physically abusive to children in terms of smacking them, in terms of really being maltreating them in physical ways, spanking them, pushing them, spitting at them, all sorts of kicking them. Any form of physical abuse at all would be rated under adverse childhood experience. The abuse could also be sexual. We also mentioned that last 2 weeks ago. And in addition to that, the abuse could also be emotional, calling children names, putting them down in front of their colleagues, denying them access to the basic amenities of life. That, for instance, barring children from watching television completely, maybe because of a religious belief of some sort, or so that, or just demeaning that child, or in fact calling them derogatory names, or putting them down, anything that actually undermines that child, and puts their self-esteem and their self-confidence at risk. So that's for abuse. Now we then go on to neglect. Neglect could also be physical and it could be emotional. So it's anything that a parent or a system or a process does to prevent a child from neglecting the needs of the child and preventing them from growing into the adults that are able to function in society. So that could also be from even denying them food, or neglecting their hygiene needs, or not taking them to their GPs on time, not immunizing them. All those things are very important. And one would wonder that what has that got to do with domestic violence? And I'm coming to that because the link is that we know that domestic violence doesn't just usually occur by itself. Usually you don't have domestic violence occurring in an isolated way. There are usually other associated problems. And some of the problems I've mentioned earlier in terms of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, as well as neglect, emotional and physical neglect, are things that occur. For instance, you might have children who have lice on their heads. You might have children who do not attend school, or who miss school for no good reasons. So those are the type of things that occur under neglect. And then we then come to the third part of the third group of adverse childhood experiences, which is domestic dysfunction, the things that happen in the home. And of course, number one on that list would be domestic violence and domestic abuse. So we can see where everything is coming together now. And of course, the other things that also happen that sometimes people don't really, we concentrate on domestic abuse, but there are other things, or domestic violence, but there are other things that could happen in the home that could actually also put that child at risk in future. For instance, if the parent has mental illness, like Reverend Ladias very aptly said, a child whose parent has had mental illness or is going through mental health problems is a child who could actually end up that's an adverse childhood that experience. The other thing, of course, is a child whose parent has been to prison, and we know that those things occur. Or a child whose parent who's not been raised, single parent families, in terms of maybe because there's been a divorce or there's been a separation or there's been abuse, that child is not being raised by two parents. All of those activities, or even substance misuse, that's something else that we don't, that is, if a child has been raised by a parent who is maybe dependent on alcohol or dependent on drugs, that's an adversity. And all of those things. So really, when one is looking at domestic abuse, looking at domestic violence, we need to look broader, because all of these things that I've mentioned, each of those categories are usually things that coexist. So as soon as you find domestic violence, you need to start looking for the other things. You need to start wondering whether is there drugs and alcohol in this family? Is there other, for instance, is there any other form of violence? Is the child being abused? Is there bullying taking place at school? So all of those things one has to think about. Now, the next question is, what are the consequences of adverse childhood experiences? Because that's what we are talking about. And we said that domestic violence is one of those adverse childhood experiences. Now, we know that young people who have had adverse childhood experiences in later life, and in fact, as they grow, they are prone to depression, they are prone to low self-esteem, poor self-confidence, post-traumatic stress disorder. They are prone to anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety disorders. Sometimes you just find a child who is so keyed up, or an adult, they're young adults, but they can't ever relax. They're just almost always uptight. Everything is a big deal. And this is not to put anyone down, but I'm just saying that those are warning signs that we can look out for. You see somebody, of course, every one of us, if you are going for an interview tomorrow, for instance, or you are preparing for an interview or an exam, there's that normal type of anxiety. But this is somebody who by every means should be so competent because of their educational background, because of the experiences they've had, because they should really have a robust feeling about themselves. But they are keyed up about the most common things. They get keyed up or get anxious about even the most basic things that we would take for granted. sometimes it's because they've had adverse childhood experiences that have set them up. Because what we do know is that adverse childhood experiences, for instance, has consequences on the way the brain also develops. So those people who have had those experiences actually have their what we call their stress response heightened, in terms of the way they respond to stress is exaggerated. So it's like you see, it's basically the way I could describe it is like you see a mosquito or you see a spider and then you get an hammer to kill it, or you get a machine gun, or you get so really it's like their response to stress is an overdrive or an overkill, and that affects every way their performance in across life. So we now know, we've talked about the impact that it has on their mental health. The other impact that it actually has on their mental health is what we call a personality disorder. And I think that's very crucial, because the reality is that a number of people who are in fact perpetrators of domestic violence have some sort of a personality disorder. So the question is, what's a personality disorder? In order to talk about a personality disorder, we need to talk about what personality is. And sometimes those constructs are very difficult to express. How do you describe what a personality is? In simple terms, personality is a collection of our characteristics and traits that we've gathered from our childhood and as we grow up. And by the time we then become adults, they become deeply entrenched. And that brings me to the point that Reverend Lade made, and also that Dr. Francis made as well, that sometimes people who engage in domestic violence, they find themselves almost like, it's like they're almost feeling helpless, because that's become their second nature. It's become the automatic way that they respond to crisis. When they're under stress, that's what they automatically do. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that they are choosing to be like that. But a lot of times it's because they are programmed to be like that. And it's all these adverse childhood experiences that have actually programmed them in that way. So going to personality disorder, so personality is really about the childhood, the traits and characteristics that we've gathered over time from our childhood, which is shaped by our environment, shaped by our education, and shaped by experiences. And those are the things that then affect our adult life. So what's personality disorder? Personality disorder is then somebody who has developed a personality that is dysfunctional. A personality, because of their childhood experiences, they've developed a personality in which it makes it difficult to have a relationship with themselves, a relationship with others, and a relationship with the world. Because it is during childhood that we begin to form our views of ourselves, of others, and the world. So children who have experienced bullying, who have experienced domestic violence, who have experienced abuse, neglect, the parent not being there, parent being on drugs or alcohol, all those experiences, they affect people's personality. They affect the way the child then begins to relate with themselves. And so personality disorder, what you find with people who have a personality disorder is that they have difficulty in all their life experiences. They have difficulty in particularly their interpersonal relationships, starting with their relationship with themselves. They are the people who are difficult to get along with in intimate relationships. They usually have turbulent relationships in terms of spouses. And those spouses, usually people who have a personality disorder, it's not uncommon for them to engage either to attract somebody else who also has a personality disorder, or to be a victim or a perpetrator of domestic violence in a relationship. The other thing is that in their relationship with their families and friends as well. So do you, maybe sometimes you come across people that you're almost like they're in your life, but you walk around them like walking on eggshells. It's like you're almost not sure how this person is going to respond. So those are the type of people, sometimes it's because they've got a personality disorder. And so they have a difficulty in their relationship with themselves, relationship with others, relationship with friends and family, relationship with work colleagues. They are the people that if there's going to be a problem in the office, you can almost be sure that that person is going to be involved. They are the ones that wouldn't follow protocol. They are the ones that wouldn't, they would do things out of the norm that is not expected. They break all the rules, and they just don't get along with anyone. And in addition to that, they might also find it difficult to submit to authority in terms of breaking laws, breaking rules. those type of people might also have problems with substances. And some of the other issues that people with personality disorder have is what we call the chronic state of emptiness. So there are several personality disorders, but the common one that people experience the most is borderline personality disorder, or what we call emotionally unstable personality. And really, it's about the fact that the person finds it very easy to become impulsive. They find it very easy to get angry. It's like their emotion is so brittle. And they also experience what is called chronic state of emptiness. Chronic state of emptiness in the sense of they are almost always, there's never a fulfillment. No matter what's going right in life, they've just literally, maybe they've just won the lottery, for the want of a better example. They've just won the lottery and they get back home and everything just feels empty. They just feel like there's no point in living. And usually people with personality disorder, particularly the borderline type, also have frequent suicidal ideas. They might be people who cut themselves, they harm themselves by cutting themselves. They might be people who also find that they are not able to maintain relationships. They might also be people who find that they resort to unhealthy means of dealing with difficult emotions. So drug use, alcohol use. As I'm saying all these things, I want us to be setting this against the background of domestic violence. Because what we'll find is that a lot of these things that I'm talking about, a lot of these features of domestic of personality disorder, if we look well at them, we'll find out that they're also very common in settings in which there is domestic violence or there's domestic abuse. So it's just so that we can see where the links are, and to when we see domestic violence or domestic abuse, so that we will look beyond just the surface and we can see the other things that might be happening in the background. So that's borderline personality disorder. They might also have experiences in which sometimes people just blank out. It's in technical terms, or in technical language, it's called dissociation. It's like they would have experiences in their lives in which they don't even remember. So they might just find themselves having traveled to a place, they don't remember how they got there, or it's like they're just in a daze or in a dream when they're in broad daylight. And sometimes we think that that's the way the mind, and the mind particularly, tries to cope with very difficult situations. So the mind just blanks out, and so dissociation is also one of the features of emotionally unstable personality disorder. Of course, the other types of personality disorder that could also relate to, that could also be relevant to domestic violence is paranoid personality. There are people who are always reading meaning to things. There are people who are always so sensitive, and that's and like the illustrations that have been made here today, people who won't allow their spouses to go out. They want to scrutinize. They want to screen the calls of their spouses. They want to know exactly how they spend every penny, and that's because they feel they don't feel comfortable with life. They feel that somebody's about to get them. They feel that somebody's always out to harm them. So because they're always keyed up, because they're always thinking that they're always looking at their backs, feeling the need to defend themselves, feeling the need that people can be trusted. Because of that, it affects their relationship in the home as well, and their relationship with their spouses. So paranoid personality might also be other reasons why domestic violence or domestic abuse will take place. And of course, there are other sorts of personality disorder that also occur, which are even more ominous in terms of people who have a schizoid personality. They're just odd people. They are very odd in their relationships. They are very odd in their interpretation of life. They are very odd in the way they just see and do things, and they can be very self-isolating. Of course, then we come to people who have a dissocial personality. Dissocial personality has to do really with people who we've mentioned that there are a few things that Dr. Francis has mentioned about being violent to people, about being violent to having lack of empathy. So there are people who are involved in domestic violence and they don't care about what's happened to the partner. They don't care about the fact that they've broken somebody's rib, or that they've given them a black eye. They don't care about any of those things. They just think that they don't really care. And that lack of empathy is also a feature of what we call dissocial personality. And there are also people who are likely to break the rules. They don't have any regard for any authority. They don't have any regard for anyone at all. So that's really the link between personality disorder. But the important thing to say here is that the reason why people end up like that as adults is because they've had things that have been broken in their lives as children. And those are the adverse childhood experiences. And that's where the link is. And that's why, like Reverend Lade said, whilst we should not condone domestic violence or the perpetrators of domestic violence, we also need to be conscious. We also need to let them know, we also need to treat them with empathy in terms of the fact that maybe the reason why this person is breaking other people is because they are themselves broken. And it's very important to then support them in getting help rather than stigmatize them, rather than label them or make them feel like victims. Now, as I round up, the question that you probably would want to be asking me is that, is there really a solution? This person has experienced adverse childhood adversities, maybe 4, 5, 6, or several of them. And the other thing to actually say is that domestic violence will make somebody at risk of experiencing multiple childhood adversity, childhood experiences or childhood adversities, because it comes with the territory. Drugs, alcohol, all of those other things come into the picture. Now, the question is there a solution? What can somebody do if somebody suddenly finds that you are listening to me today and you can relate to some of these things? What can you do? I think the thing to do is first to ask for help. And sometimes there are various things that we provide in psychiatric services. One of them is what is called psychoeducation groups. Psychoeducation groups in terms of really helping you to make the links. Because a lot of people who are perpetrators of domestic violence or domestic abuse are themselves feeling helpless. They just find themselves responding in the ways that they vowed never to respond. And they don't know why.
Okay,
they probably
you have 3 minutes to go.
Right.
3 minutes more.
Right.
So just stop you early, actually.
So basically, the thing we need to do is psychoeducation groups. Psychoeducation groups, some of them are called managing emotion groups. It's basically to help the perpetrator to make the links, or this victim who sometimes also looks like a perpetrator, to make the links. Where exactly did they get broken? What is it that has happened to them? That bullying in school, that negative stereotype that they've experienced in school, how that is now playing out in the adult life. So psychoeducation is very, very important. And the way to get that is also to speak to the GP, who would then refer to either primary mental health services or secondary mental health services. Of course, the other thing is talking therapy. Talking therapy, and there are various forms of talking therapies. There's psychodynamic psychotherapy, in which basically is about helping people to form the trends, to look at the trends in their lives, and to trace it back to their childhood and to see why they respond to situations the way they do. Of course, the other thing is, apart from, there's also cognitive behavioral therapy. If there's anxiety, for instance, then if there's depression, because the other thing is that personality disorder coexists with a lot of other mental disorders. Depression, they are prone to depression, they are prone to self-harm, and of course, suicide. Suicide is also a very high risk in personality disorder. So if there's a coexisting mental disorder that can be treated, the other thing to say is that personality disorder of itself does not respond well to medication. We know that if there is a coexisting mental disorder, that can be treated with medication. But really, when it comes to personality disorder by itself, mainly talking therapy is the main thing. And it's about developing a relationship with somebody that they can trust, because trust is usually a very big issue with most people with personality disorder. In fact, almost always there is trust issues. And it's about developing a long-term relationship with a therapist who gets to know them very well, and they can trust and they can begin to change. And it takes a while, but the reality and the good news, and I want to end on that note, is that people with personality disorder that can be manifested that can then express itself as domestic violence can actually be helped. There is possibility that if the person is committed and motivated to change, they can actually be taught skills that will help them to change. And of course, that includes engaging in anger management. So thank you for listening, and I hope that that has been of benefit to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajayi. That was absolutely spot on. I have lots of questions to ask you. Thank you for those who have clapped. Thank you. It's okay to clap for him. I have lots of questions to ask you towards the end, and I know that some people already posted some questions up on the chat box. We'll look at that later. Without much ado, because I know we have very little time left now, we have Peace, Raji, Ngozi. She delivered fantastically and very passionately last week. I'm really looking forward to hearing from her. Today, she's going to be talking to us about understanding of the care and children safeguarding system in UK. This is one thing that I know that a lot of us in our BEM community, we're usually very scared. I mentioned this last week, is the fact that a lot of people are scared of social services. You know, it's the fact that when you hear social worker and family, you want to run away because the assumption is they're coming to take your children. They're not. And that is why we have Peace here today to just explain to us what is there in the care system. What kind of support can you request from social services? If, for example, you've been a victim and you do know that your child has been affected by the bullying or the abuse they've seen you go through in the home. And I'm going to hand over to you now, Peace. So thank you very much, Peace. You have the floor and you have 15 minutes. Starting counting down from now, 15 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for introducing me so nicely. And thank you to Dr. Bobo and Dr. Ajayi. Oh my goodness. I've been doing this for a long time, but I've learned loads. Thank you so much for breaking down anger, breaking down personality disorder, breaking down the links. And I'm sure that was very useful to everyone. I'm really talking today about, you know, how, well, the services out there for you. That's what I'm really talking about here today. I have a little PowerPoint which I will share with you if I can find it. Hold on. That's very interesting. My it was here. And it
should be next to the chat box.
No, I am in the screen, the share screen, but hold on.
Sorry, can you enable sharing screen? You have disabled sharing screen.
For me?
So no, the host has to enable share screen.
Yeah, so Kemi,
I've enabled it already.
It is still showing as disabled. I've just tried to share and it's showing as disabled.
Okay.
If you just continue, Peace, if you just continue reading through and then
yeah, she's got the permission. You haven't got the permission, so she should be able to.
Okay, can you give me the permission to share as well, please?
Okay, I've just given you that permission.
All right, I'll continue.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, so I was saying about yeah, last week we had a really good discussion and we learned really about what domestic violence was and the types of it and how it affects people, how it, you know, affects men, women, and children, and looking at it really from a child's point of view. And if like this workshop really is directed towards people from the African community and BAME community. And for many people who have moved from all parts of Africa to here, we're in a different environment, we're in a different community, we're in a different country that has different rules, regulations, and laws, you know. And so some things that we did back home and we thought they were okay, we can't continue to do them here. And so when Reverend Ladi said about how people are afraid of social workers and social services, that's just the reason why, because I believe it's the lack of knowledge and information about, you know, where you now live and how things should work where you now live. So yeah, we also looked at last week about, you know, all the reasons why, I mean, domestic violence it affects everyone from every country, every gender, but looking at it from a purely African background. There are lots of other reasons why we have these issues. You know, we have issues with in-laws or expectations, not issues, expectations from in-laws, how we want to bring up our children, our religion, our traditional beliefs, all those things, you know, they follow us when we move, and we then have to remember that we're in a new place, and although our culture, our tradition is quite important and very strong, there are bits of it that actually probably were not too right to start with, and we're not very right to start with. And actually in a new place, some things that we did which were okay, in quotes, are not okay here because there are rules and regulations and laws enforcing these things. Right, so that's just a little recap from what we talked about last week. Looking at domestic violence where children are concerned, like Dr. Ajayi said, when children are in an environment where they're exposed to domestic violence, it affects them as well. And in fact, it is seen as child abuse. That's what it is. Children repeatedly witnessing incidences like this is seen as child abuse. And yeah, it affects them. And you know, all the things Dr. Ajayi talked about how, and even when Dr. Bohm was talking about anger and about children not adjusting properly and how it affects them. Now, when our children go to schools, to creches, to, you know, playgrounds and things, the adults who are looking after them, you know, are noticing some symptoms, if you like. They're noticing behaviors that are a bit strange, you know, children who are withdrawn, or children who cringe when people come near them, or children who, you know, who say they have tummy ache, or there's all sorts of presentations they're noticing. And so the adults looking after them will, because it's their duty of care, they will alert services to say, this child is behaving in a way that is not very normal. It's not in a way that they're not really expecting children of this age to behave, you know, and they will alert services. So what I would say is, you know, how we is when you say to kids, oh, I'm going to smack you, those things are considered abuse. So when there is abuse in the house, or when there's domestic violence between the parents or between families, or, you know, sometimes children also then bear the brunt of it. They themselves get physically abused themselves. Not just the emotional abuse, which it's a given because of the, you know, the trauma they are witnessing all the time, but also they can get, when mom is upset or when dad is upset, they might get to smack themselves, or they try to get in between arguments, or they might get hurt in the process, you know, and that is also abuse in itself. And so when they go out to schools and places, and the adults who are looking after them notice these things, they do referrals, you know, to social services. And then this is why the thing about people being scared of social work is coming. Now, what I'd like to say is, what we're saying right now is we're breaking the circle. You know, we're breaking the circle of mom, dad, or partners or whatever, having incidents in the home, and this is affecting the children. Then we know that the children grow up with this effect, mental health problems themselves, or becoming perpetrators themselves, or becoming victims themselves. So this really is to help us to break the circle. And we break the circle really by seeking support. You know, that's the way to do it. Seek support where you live. And in this case, where obviously we're on the internet, so we're talking to a wide range of people, but we are also concentrating on the people who live in the Southern and the Essex area, and maybe the Thurrock area, seeking support to, you know, to help with domestic abuse incidents. Like Dr. Francis says, if you are experiencing domestic violence, you know, or you notice somebody who is behaving in a way that looks like they might be experiencing something adverse, then it's to support them, encourage them to go to the authorities, ring 999. That is so important. What usually happens really that we find is things have gone on for months, for weeks before people, you know, come to seek for help. And we know that when can support people at the beginning stages of whatever the incident is, then the outcomes are a bit more positive, you know. So we talked at the beginning about someone who died yesterday. Now, I know that people have tried to help her, but can you imagine a situation where really she took on board the help that was offered and left that situation? We wouldn't be happy. She wouldn't be an example today. She wouldn't be a statistic today, you know. So the important thing is at the beginning to seek support, not when it escalates. What we find really in social services, in mental health, the police, what we find is when things get to us, then it's got to the point where it's gone way out of hand, and you know, people are injured, people are dead, bones are broken, children are taken away. But it didn't start on day one. I mean, it didn't start on that day when they presented to you. It started, you know, so many weeks ago, so many months ago. You know, there have been warning signs, there have been red flags, there have been one slap here, then tomorrow is 2 punches, and next tomorrow you're on the floor being kicked. And then by the time you seek for help, you know, things have already gone quite bad. So what we're saying is, at the beginning, before things start to escalate, try and seek for help. Now, we understand that there's so many reasons why people don't seek the help they need. And sometimes, again, it's cultural, it's stigma, we're ashamed, we're embarrassed, we don't want to tell anybody our dirty secrets, we want to keep these things by ourselves. So if there's anything we're taking away from this workshop today, if there's anything we're taking away, is please speak up. You know, don't keep things to yourself, don't hide it. It's happening to so many people, and you will never be the only one it's happening to. And we would like it never to happen to anybody, but the reality of the matter is it's happening to so many people. If you think of all the statistics we've talked about since the beginning of this workshop, it's happening to so many people, so you're not alone. And if people speak to you, like your friends come to you or you notice something, please believe them. Because people think, well, who will I tell? How will they believe me? He's such a nice man, or she's such a nice girl. That is the impression she gives to the people out there. So people won't believe me if I say she's doing this, or if I say he's doing that. You know, so if people come—
4 minutes more.
If people
got 4 minutes more.
Thank you. If people come to you, please believe them, encourage them, give them support. My slide had, which is a shame that it's not coming up. In fact, I cannot understand why it's not coming up. My slide had signposts of places locally, and I know that Klimax she'll try and contact everyone who's been part of this, and so she'll have the contact details for everyone. But I had slides that showed us the local places. So for those of us who are from African communities in this area, in Southend, who need confidential, culturally sensitive support, you can contact Klimax. We offer, Kemi said it at the beginning, we offer mentoring services. As a result of this, if you need to speak to someone confidentially for information, advice, and posting, contact us. Like I said, Kemi will send out those emails that will have all the contacts you need. There are all sorts of services within Southend, like we talked about mental health, personality disorder therapy. There's a service called Therapy for You, IAPT, self-referral, all sorts of therapy they offer, behavioral therapy, anger management, and you can refer yourself. If you don't feel confident to do it, you can speak to your GP. That's usually the first port of call. And if you don't know how to go about that, if you contact Klimax, we will signpost you appropriately. That's one of the ones for the mental health. And for domestic abuse as well, there's lots of services in Southend. There's safe places, there's Compass. Again, I wish my slide came up. You would have seen all those contacts, but I'm very confident that you will receive emails from us giving you a full list of contacts where you can go to. And actually, if you don't feel confident to go to any of those places, if you contact Klimax, we will be able to speak to you, offer you mentoring if you need it, and then signpost you or give you information and advice as appropriate. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Kemi for, organizing all this. Thank you to Dr. Domo. Thank you to
You're still around. Don't thank her yet. Don't thank her yet. You're still around because we're still taking questions. So you thank at the end. So hold the thanks.
My thank yous. Yes, but I'm really proud of
hold it until the end.
Yes, just proud of the work and the information that we're giving and how we're making things better for ourselves. This is for ourselves and improving us.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause to Peace? Thank you so much. It's okay for you to do the clap sign. It's okay to do the clap sign. Thank you so much for that. Fantastic. One of the things I say, a lot of us in the community have a phobia for institution. So it's about the hospital, it's about the doctors, it's about psychiatrists. I know we have 2 psychiatrists in the house. It's the fact that people are like, oh, you won't take me to the shrink. It's about, so many things. And for us, when we have such platforms like this in our community, it's about breaking what appears to be a big chunk, breaking it down into bits and pieces. And that is what the session we've had today and the one we had last week, that is what it is all about. Domestic abuse, domestic violence, oftentimes we think, oh, it is that person over there, it is that person over there. It's not with me, it's not with my sister, it's not with my brother, it's somewhat, but however, we know as we get to hear such news, like the fatal one that happened yesterday, that it could be anyone. And I'm just going to share quickly on a very, very sensitive area. This is an area that I know that we talked a little bit about it last week. And I actually had to jump in quickly. It's like, oh, let us stop the religious bashing, Let's stop because the church has played a role. The religious faith, the communities have played a role. Yes, they have played a role so far, but however, I'm just going to talk about the reality on ground. It is still work in progress. We're not there yet. To be honest with you, all of the various information in the ethnic minority community is still work in progress. Because for a long while, we're an ethnic group who believed in shrouding or keeping some information away from ourselves. We believe very much in the ostrich mentality of just hiding our heads under the sand, It is not my family, so I don't need to know. It is their family, so I don't need to know. Well, however, a lot of information is out there. We are in a setting where in a country, we are in an environment where there's so much support, there's so much help out there that no woman should die from domestic abuse. No woman, no man should die from domestic abuse. No child should grow up having to experience a lot of those things that Dr. Ajayi talked about earlier. No child should grow up witnessing the father hit the mom over and over and over again, and the mother is staying in that relationship because you know what? Oh, I don't want to become a single parent. I don't want to be labeled as a single parent. I need to keep my head. Oh, I'm a minister. I'm a religious minister. I need to stay in this relationship because I don't want the name of God dragged into the mud. And I suppose that was what happened to Beatrice. She stayed in the relationship. She stayed in the marriage. The husband was a pastor. And she felt, you know what? I need to protect the name of God. I'm going to be shaking a little bit of some tables today. I'm sorry, with all due apologies. I'm a person of the cloak myself as well. But however, I'm very much aware of some things going on in our community. And we need to call a spade and actually make sure that we respond appropriately. So I'm going to be sharing my screen, bear with me. I had to put this very quickly together last minute, courtesy. And I'm going to blame Kemi. I will blame her. Okay, so this is my, if you can see, if you just put your thumbs up, just know that you can see my screen. Because sometimes this thing plays up very funny. Nobody's putting their thumbs up, you can see my screen, fantastic. So what I'm going to be speaking about very quickly, I'm going to have to rush through this as well. The next 10-15 is about talk about domestic abuse in our community and especially the religious community. And why do we need to? We do understand that religion is personal and it's actually an institution, that is very well respected in our community, the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic community. It is something that it is, our various experiences of religion differs from one person to the other. And I'm talking about religion and domestic abuse on a twofold. The fact that religion can actually be a source of healing. Religion can actually be a source of protection for a victim, somebody who's gone through domestic abuse, is the fact that in a lot of our religious settings, there is actually the provisions of counseling. A lot of pastors, whether trained or untrained, they use counseling skills. And it's also the fact that there's so many scriptures, there's so many texts in all our various religious resources that we use that actually helps in the process of healing. I'm a person of faith and I'm a Christian. And I, funny enough, I quoted a scripture this morning on my WhatsApp status. And I talked about what God said, that he heals the brokenhearted. There's so many texts in our various religious resources that shows us or that can actually help us on our journey to recovery. However, I do need to balance also that religion can be used and can be misused. Religion can be used as an excuse. Religion can be used as an excuse to condone an abusive relationship. And why do I say that? Faith plays an important part of the survivor's journey of healing. I've said that. And this place I've just highlighted. Now, domestic violence can affect anyone, irrespective of our religion. And that's why I'm not exactly talking about Christianity, Islam, or any other form of religion. I'm talking generally about religion. It is the fact that religion can also be used as a tool. And I just pulled this diagram very quickly off from the internet, how religion can be used as a tool. The fact is that we mentioned earlier about the fact that abuse is in different areas. It's not just about domestic. It's the fact that they're all very much linked together. And I like the fact that Dr. Ajayi talked earlier as well about institutionalized abuse. I mentioned about neighborhood abuse. I mentioned about all of that. Well, I've used this cycle here just to kind of show us the wheel of how religious and spiritual abuse can take place. We do need to understand how this rolls so that we can stop it. A lot of us that will be listening now or may listen to this presentation later, we have at one time or the other been victims of religious abuse. And don't worry, I'm taking this somewhere and I'm trying to be as quick as possible. What are the various types of abuses that can be? What are the various kinds of abuses that can be in a religious setting? Is the fact that sometimes people would use scriptures to actually perpetrate abuse, especially in relationships. So for example, a pastor will say to the wife, if it was a wife of a pastor, or the wife of an imam, or the wife of a priest in whatever religion you hold, that listen, this is what our resources, our religious book tells us. You must submit to me, you must do this. So I am the head of this, so you have to listen to me. And they would now use this as a form to isolate the victim. This can also be used as a community coercion. And I would refer to a particular, I don't want to mention this particular faith now. I don't want to mention, but I will refer to some particular faith where they actually use the word, where they exercise the person. Once you have deviated away from their belief, they would cast you out. They would no longer relate with you. And we know that quite a lot of religion do that. So the fear the woman or the man has is that if I leave my abuser, I would no longer be part and parcel of this community. It's the fact that sometimes the scripture or the religious resource is used to blame. It's the fact that people are restricted from use of healthcare because they're told, for example, listen, you are a JW. I'm sorry, I don't want to be specific about a particular religion, but it's just that the beliefs in some particular religion sometimes will prevent a person from accessing healthcare. And this is a form of abuse. I know that we've measured a lot today on abuse between partners, but we do need to think a little bit wider, that abuse extends not just between partners, it's also parent-child abuse, and it's also child-parent abuse. I am aware of situations where children have actually abused their parents as well. So what we're trying to do today is to give you a wider view. So peradventure, if there's anyone in the house today who is being abused by their child, you can ask for help as well. Do not keep quiet about it. you can ask for help. I am aware of people in situations like that. Don't think, oh no, I'm too strong. How can I tell somebody that my son is beating me or my daughter slapped me? You should. Don't keep quiet about it. What is the role of religion and how can religion come in? I've already mentioned how religious abusers sometimes, which quote from the text. Is also the fact that the dynamics manifest itself as an abuser telling the survivor that they're not living up to the ideals of what a partner should look like according to their religion. Abusers belonging to faith that emphasize marriage may manipulate the esteem for a religious union to pressure the victim into staying in the relationship. So I don't know what happened to Beatrice. She's not here today, but peradventure, the partner had used religion to pressure her to continue to stay in the relationship. We need to understand that our places of faith should be a place of healing. It should not be a place where people are encouraged to continue to stay in an abusive relationship. It should not be. And what are some of the things that we can do? Yes, despite these complexities I just mentioned now, faith and religion should be a vital tool. And I know that last week, Dr. Ajayi mentioned this, and I mentioned it as well. Is the fact that we need to raise a lot more awareness within our religious leaders. Some of them are not skilled. The truth is you cannot give what you don't have. There is a particular skilling that you need to have with working with victims of domestic abuse. Some of them had mentioned last week. Yes, they can talk to us, they can talk to people around, but there are specialist independent domestic abuse people who have been trained to work with people. Yes, it's okay to tell a person, jump out, leave the relationship the first time he slaps you. It's not that easy, because what happens is that if they're financially tied together, if there's still an emotional tie, you should not be telling the person to jump out immediately. Yes, call 999 if there's physical violence, there's a need to step out. But however, there's just a need for our religious leaders to be trained. It is really, really, really important for us to be trained. I'm just going to stop sharing so that I just talk to us straight face to face by this. There's a need for leaders to be trained on how to work with a victim that is in an abusive relationship. It is a specialist area. I'm not an IDVA. I'm not an independent domestic violence advocate. But I've attended quite a lot of training around domestic abuse, and I know that it's something that you need to plan. Because the statistics here, and I'm just going to quickly share the statistics here, about the amount of people who have actually been subject to, bear with me one moment, I just want to quickly go because I want to read some statistics here for us. The number of people who have actually died, who have actually been killed by the abusive partners, where the exit plan has not been well planned, is usually when they're trying to leave at the wrong time. I've just put some statistics together just for us to have an idea of what we're dealing with. The fact that what Klimax is doing today, what Klimax Relationship Help is doing today is something that we cannot just throw at the side. It's an ongoing thing. For me, it was quite shocking when I learned today that the highest statistics of people who have gender-based violence is in South Africa, and this includes rape and domestic abuse, is the fact that 55% of domestic abuse perpetrators are linked with drinking alcohol. And that is extremely high. Yes, we've talked about the fact that some of them might have personality disorder, some of them have anger issues, but 55% is quite high. Women who are abused are 15 times more likely to abuse alcohol. So it's not just the fact that the perpetrators have abused alcohol, it's also the fact that the victims themselves may they're 15 times more likely to abuse alcohol. And that is why the support has to be out there. So if there's a victim who is still in a relationship and is still experiencing abuse, there's a likelihood that they will be resorting to alcohol to cope. And of course, we know what the attendant effect of this is on all our various public sectors agencies. Is the effect on the drugs and alcohol team services, it's on the hospitals, it's on so many, it's in the schools, it's in the families, it's in mental health, it's on a lot. And for us, there's just a need for us to know that women between the ages of 18 to 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. 19% of domestic violence involves a weapon, 19%. So just bear this in mind, that a lot of the other percentage, that means that a lot of the 61%, no, a lot of the 71% that we have, they're not violent. So it's not about looking out for that little sign on the body of that person. Oh, she's been hit. Oh, she's wearing glass. She's wearing sunshades, even though she's inside the house. So she's trying to cover a blue eye or a black eye. Is the fact that the majority of the other forms of domestic abuse in the home, they're not physical. It's not about a weapon. What are the things that we need to do? What are the things that we need to do in a religious setting? It's about training. It's also about getting to know what the signs, and I'm quickly going to read some of the signs that we need to know. I know that Dr. Bomo talked a little bit earlier as well. She talked about the signs that we have. I just want to quickly share some with us, some of the signs that we need to be aware of. The various types of abuses that we have is physical abuse, domestic violence or abuse, or sexual abuse, psychological or emotional abuse, financial. Dr. Bomo talked about that. Neglect is one. When a person is supposed to give you money for something and they intentionally decide not to give you, neglect is one. And these are some of the possible signs for physical abuse, just for us to note them. Sometimes about injuries, injuries that is inconsistent with the person's lifestyle, is bruises, cuts, burns, loss of hair, there's a clump of hair that's been removed, frequent injuries, unexplained falls, subdued or changed behavior in the presence of a particular person, is signs of malnutrition. Sometimes people are very malnourished when they're not allowed to eat well, and that is where neglect comes in. Possible signs of domestic violence or abuse is also low self-esteem. Dr. Ajayi mentioned that. Feeling that the abuser is not at fault, that is their fault, is about verbal abuse. Dr. Boma mentioned that. So what do we do in a various religious setting? I'm just going to repeat what I said last week and what Dr. Ajayi said earlier as well. It's about awareness. No, he said that last week, and I'm saying that again today. It's about awareness, 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 awareness. We cannot keep quiet about it. Our places of faith should be a place where people can come for respite. Do not push, in the religious setting, do not push a person back to the abusers. Do not use your religious resources to hold a person down saying, oh, God is against divorce. No, God is not against divorce. God is against death. God is against abuse. God is against a situation where you're bringing up a child and the child is witnessing a mother or a father being hit all the time. And that brings me to one thing that makes a lot of people run away. And this is one thing, because I've been there and I can speak from that platform. This is one thing that makes a lot of people run away from living in a relationship, is the fact that I don't want to be a single mother. I don't want to be a single mother. I'm going to throw that open, and that is me. I finished with my own little spiel. I know that we have about 15 minutes to take questions, and I know that there's some burning questions in the house. And there's one question I want to pose to Dr. Ajayi, so I'm not going to open the floor. I'll ask other people to open the floor. And I know that Kemi is also on Facebook. I don't know if anybody has added a question on Facebook. So over to you, Kemi. Is there any other question that has come on Facebook?
There is no question currently. Maybe now that you said it, people will leave their questions.
Okay, so let's look at the questions on the chat box. I have one that I'm going to ask Dr. Ajayi, because as soon as he said it was like, okay. And this was around characteristics. Is it okay for me to open the floor and ask Dr. Ajayi?
Please do.
I know I'm supposed to be a speaker, and here am I asking questions. Okay, you said something about children who grow up in single parent setting, that sometimes they may be prone. Because I quoted you. Sometimes that they may be prone to the adverse effect of adverse childhood experience. Yes, that was the word, adverse childhood experience. You mentioned children who grow up in single parenthood. I'd like you to expatiate on that, please.
I think it's a very apt question, because it needs to be balanced in terms of the fact that what the research shows us is that children are better off growing up with a single supportive parent who creates a safe environment for them than to be with two parents who are always at loggerheads.
Thank you. That's a good balance. That answers the question. Yeah. I said that's a good balance. That's an absolute good balance.
Yeah, so it's not really. So I think the reference to single parenthood is not about the fact that they are raised by single parents. It's about the fact that they've experienced things that has led to that single parenthood: acrimonious divorce, domestic violence, lack of funds, emotional abuse, and all the other things that come with it before then the single parenthood occurs. So it's all the other associated things that lead to that actually makes them at risk, not the fact that they were raised by just a single parent.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ajayi. You have balanced there because I'm one person who advocates for a safe environment to bring children up. That safe environment, if it's a single parent environment, let it be, as long as it's devoid of violence, devoid of bullying, devoid of harassment. Children need to grow up in a supportive environment. And I'm just saying to any woman or any man who is out there who is so scared or being labeled as a single parent and you're holding on in an abusive relationship, that it is not worth it. The impact of your child seeing, the mother does not need to slap you. Remember the statistic we just read now, 19%, it's only 19% of domestic abuse that is physical. The other percentage, they're non-physical. It is a silent treatment. Your child observes you both give yourself in the house. Is the fact that the child does not know who to align to. Is it the mother or is it the father? All of that actually creates trauma. Trauma is one thing that a lot of us in our adult ages were living through. We saw things we should not have seen. And so many lives have been damaged. And that was why I'm glad that Dr. Ajayi mentioned about the challenges perpetrators have as well. And I like the fact that he listed quite a lot of the signs to look out for in people who have personality disorder. So please, 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 if there's anyone out there, don't keep quiet about it. Don't think, oh, I don't want to be a single parent, so I continue to stay in an abusive relationship. Oh, I'm a pastor. You're a pastor's wife, and you know there's abuse going on, but you're keeping quiet because you want to keep your congregation sweet, but you are damaging the lives of your children. We need to think deeper about this. You're an imam or you're an imam's wife, and there's so many things going on in the background at the home, and you can't keep quiet because, oh, you have to be the obedient wife. We need to move away totally away from that. We have a new generation that we're built that we cannot afford to break. A lot of us have inadvertently created difficult childhood experiences for our children that we should have taken them out from earlier. I'm just going to throw the floor open now. Peradventure anybody has any question to any one of us. It's an open floor now. So for those who are in the studio with us, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Kemi, please go ahead.
There's a question here that says, what if it's my husband's family that are abusing me? So I guess what the lady is asking is if the relatives are the one perpetrating the harm, would she be advised to leave the relationship? More so that is the family that is, I think this is more like a cultural centered question. Yes.
Yes, very cultural, very, very cultural. Is it okay for me to answer that? Is it okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if it is, you do not have a contract with your husband's brothers or family, the contract you have is with your husband. If your husband is not protecting you enough and is allowing you to be abused by his brothers or his sisters, I would suggest, because thank God that we operate in a community where we have elders around us. I know that it was one thing that Kemi alluded to last week, the fact that we still have our community, that we cannot throw away what held our community together. We still have elders. There will be an elder, when I say elder, I mean older people who can give good advice. I would suggest that you have a word with them, because obviously I'm supposing that this is not a physical violence, it's probably verbal abuse. If the abuse is too much and your husband is not protecting you, I would suggest that you seek for help outside. And when I say seek for help outside, is if it will be necessary, a lot depends. There's so many things behind this question there's so many scenarios beside this question that are not private to, so it'll be difficult to give an exact advice. Or however, I would say if you have your children and if you have your life, you need to be thinking of your children, you need to be thinking of your life, and you should resort first to your husband, ask your husband to protect you. And if he's not, escalate it to people in the community, to speak to people who you know can trust. Because
Okay.
it's not a criminal offense. So I can't say go to the police. If you call 999,
to add to your voice is the fact that marriage is between the husband and wife, and the extended family are meant to support your relationship and not to for any reason cause you or your partner any harm. And if the like Reverend Lade has said, if the husband is not stepping in to protect you as necessary as it be, we can see in that scenario also that he's a perpetrator, because he's actually helping the people. Or is he, you can't be neutral in kind of a situation. Yeah, it's aiding and abetting. Thank you. So even though you may not see your husband, you may not see your husband as the one perpetrating the abuse, the fact that because he is not actually doing anything to stop them, or perhaps is not being firm enough, creating boundaries, that could, in his terms, be assumed that is aiding them to do that. And in that case, it's quite important that you do seek help, because I have seen a video lately whereby the mother-in-law had the wife and be asking the son to beat the wife. So that is like 2 against 1, So,
wow.
So many things are happening. Don't leave things that is until it gets messy. Seek help. And if the help is coming and you think that things are not improving, common sense is always necessary. Do the needful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another question I said was, how can we help a child that has gone through adverse childhood experience, but who is now very, very depressed?
Shall we pass that on to Dr. Ajayi or Dr. Bomo, either of them? Let's ask Dr. Ajayi. The next one will go to Dr. Bomo.
Right. Okay. So that's the question is, how do you help somebody who
has experienced adverse childhood experience? They don't say the time, but who is now very depressed?
So I think it goes back to the basic thing that Dr. Boma and myself have been talking about in terms of getting help, and the GP will be the first place. I think to start with, I want to commend the person who asked that question, because there's a positive in that. They've recognized that there's a problem. Because sometimes as well, even in our communities, the challenge is even recognizing that the child is depressed because of the cultural, because of our myths and our misunderstandings and misgivings about mental problems. So it's half of the job done because they've recognized that there is a problem. I think the next stage would then be to seek help in terms of speaking to the GP. And then also, I think it's also helpful to try and identify what it is that is causing the depression. Sometimes as bullying could be missed. Sometimes the other thing we didn't talk about today, which is very crucial, is that sometimes it's not the parents who are abusing the child. It might be an uncle, it might be a friend of the family. It might be, and those things are happening underneath. And the parents, as far as they're concerned, think everything is okay. So, because no matter how much therapy that child receives, no matter how much support, no matter how much medication, if the root cause is not addressed, it could be bullying at school, then that situation is not going to go away. I'm sure that Dr. Boma probably has a few thoughts about it as well.
Dr. Boma, over to you. Anything to add?
Like sometimes it's undisclosed. Yeah, I said sometimes it might be undisclosed sexual abuse, because I've seen someone recently who was very depressed, and it was a trusted family member. So that can also part of the childhood adversities, which later may come up as depression when the child is a bit older. And like Dr. Ajayi said, the first point of call is always first speak to your GP. GPs normally signpost patients in the right direction. If the child is under 18, I think go to CAMS, and there's also EUMS in Essex area, emotional well-being for children. So GP is usually the first port of call. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question here. Very quickly, the question is that I recently had a divorce, but my husband still verbally abused my children.
Do you want us to give an answer to that?
Yeah, I think what the person is trying to say is that they've gone through divorce, but despite that, the husband still abused the kids.
Okay, yes, can I take that question, please? Peace, can you please respond? Thank you, Peace.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, well, Dr. Francis talked about it, Dr. Bomo talked about it when she talked about anger. And I think really this man sounds to me like he's still very angry about the situation and he's taking it out on the children. And I do know that although he might not be physically abusing them, but he is emotionally and verbally abusing them. And there's still a place to get the police involved. I know that might seem a bit heavy-handed, but he has no right to do this, to do this to the children and to his ex-wife. So yes, I mean, you would say maybe speak to the family, speak to his friends to see if someone can speak to him. But I would like to think that, I don't know the situation, but it seems to me that he has disregarded all these things, because to get to the point where you are actually divorced, you've probably gone through all the, we've gone through families trying to settle the problems, trying to, you've gone past friends trying to intervene into the point where you are actually divorced. And at this point, she should be allowed then to live a peaceful life and the children should be allowed to thrive. So I would say, as heavy-handed as it might sound, that she probably needs to take it very seriously and report it to the police who should put him in his place.
And to add to that also is to make this lady aware that divorce does not necessarily mean that it's an end to a problem or the situation is going to go away. Oftentimes when divorce happens, it leaves behind resentment, anger, hatred in double dose. And most times when people cannot reach onto their partners, children are often used as the bait. So in a bid for him to get at you, he might be going through the children, and it is your responsibility. Like Reverend Lade said earlier, that living an abuser is not always the first point of call, because at the end of the day, you have to plan your exit route. Part of planning your exit route is ensuring that the children are well protected. And for you to be able to protect them, you may need to get some enforcement in place, where that is where the authority comes in, going through the right channel to get what you cannot do, however, is ignore the signs, because what's in this case now, the verbal abuse that the man is giving to the children, you can't measure what the impact will be on their life in the long run. So you might even think, oh, daddy is abusing these children verbally. You never know what the damage is causing them academically, socially, emotionally, psychologically. So it goes all encompassing. And the fact remains that as long as that goes on, you are still not independent of that marriage. It's more like the person is still using control factor over you. So what I always say to people is, it's okay if you want to divorce, but just make sure you are doing it the right way. Packing your stuff out of the house does not necessarily mean you divorce, but ensuring that you tick all the right boxes and doing it, with in a very conscious manner, that you don't allow your emotions to cloud your judgment of things, and ensuring that you don't allow what people say, the cultural belief, the religion belief, or what have you, stop you from creating the necessary boundaries to provide security. Because for divorce to come in the first instance is the issue of safety, your safety, the safety of your children, the well-being of them being able to focus. Like Dr. Ajayi said earlier, that children who grow up in a safe and space with a single parent are even more likely to do better than living in a relationship that we have two people who are always at loggerheads. So if you have reached that point that you think, okay, we've divorced, you have to be confident enough to know that you are providing that safe space. Otherwise, the essence of divorce will be defeated, and you are still putting yourself at danger from such man. So that what I'll say is, you still need to seek help, contact the right authority. Don't do the mushroom divorce or what have you. If you're going to leave this man, set the parameters in place to ensure that you and your children are safe from further abuse. Thank you.
Kemi, can I just quickly add also that when you're right about when you said mushroom divorces, if you're divorced properly and there are children in the mix, then really the courts have a say in how the children are looked after, who they stay with, who they see, how many times they see mom, how many times they see dad, things like that. And they would take into account the fact that one parent is emotionally abusive or verbally abusive. They will take it into account when they decide the well-being and the welfare of the children after the divorce. So yes, that's another thing to think about. If you have been properly divorced through the proper channels with social services, children's services involved, and you've gone through the courts, then yeah, the welfare of the children will also be a part of that. So yes, you would need to let social services know, and like I said, the police know, just so that these things are taken into account when the decision is made about the welfare of the children and their accommodation and where they should be living and who looks after them and where they reside.
And if you require further support to this, please contact Klimax Family Hub. We can support you correctly and rightly to ensure that those children are well protected. The number is 07878 and 07974-74114, or you could just email info@klimax.org.uk. It's very straight, easy, it's free, and it's confidential. We promise we'll do our best to signpost you correctly and get you the needed help. What you shouldn't do is to ignore the situation, especially because of the children involved. Do seek help, and we will do our very best to support you through the process. I'll hand back now to Reverend Lade.
Before you, can I?
Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Bomo.
I just say something about this case, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember we spoke about the emotional tools which the perpetrator uses to control his victim. This is a good example because he's using the children. He's trying to intimidate the children just to get at their mother. This is a form of abuse. This is one of the emotional tools. And like Kemi Klimax said, she needs to seek help. Not only help, get the, and also Peace spoke about, get the police involved, get the authority. I'm heavy-handed, but this is another way in which the perpetrator is using power and control to control her, even though they're physically divorced, not living in the same house, but still using the children to intimidate her. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic evening listening to everyone here. The depth and the wealth of information we've shared with ourselves this evening, I'm sure will go a long way with those who probably would watch this later. And that is the power of the internet. That's the power of social media that a lot of us have. I'd just like to, first of all, say thank you to Dr. Bomo, who started the floor off very well this evening, telling us about the signs to look out for, and especially about a passion to my heart, anger, how to intervene early enough for perpetrators, what could trigger it, and how those who may be experiencing anger in an uncontrolled way, how and what they can do to actually ease off. That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Dr. Bomo. From Dr. Bomo, we went over to Dr. Ajayi, who talked about the adverse childhood experiences, how that can progress and lead into personality disorder. And he broke down personality disorder for us. What are the signs? What are the things to look out for? And the very unfortunate thing with personality disorder is that it's not exactly treatable by medication. Of course, with a lot of therapies they can be supported, but well, we can intervene, we can stop this. And that is where Peace came in and talked about the role of social services, what they can do in supporting families. You're not alone. Don't keep quiet. They don't take away your children. In fact, it's expensive for them to take your children away. So we need to stop fearing social services. They are there to support. I do know, though, that in some boroughs, there's some few issues I'm very much aware of. However, majority of social services are there to protect the rights of the child, are there to make sure that the child grows with ticking all the milestones the child is meant to grow up with. And of course, you had little old me here talk to you a little bit about religion, domestic abuse. How is it linked together? How can religion be used as a tool in recovery, in healing, for a person may have been a victim? And how, unfortunately, religion can also be used as a tool in coercive control. Well, it's a conversation that cannot end today. I think we kind of highlighted that last week when we met. We cannot just finish it today. Because if you notice, when I was going through my presentation, I had to skip through. Same with Dr. Bomo, and I remember having to tell Dr. Ajayi too that I had to slow down. So trust us, this conversation is not ended today. It's something that has to continue. But we'd like to say thank you so much, first and foremost, to our audience this makes me laugh. I'd like to say thank you to those who are in the studio with us, that is those who are in the Zoom meeting with us. Thank you so much for staying. Thank you for the questions you've asked. Thank you, because it's not easy sitting down for 2 hours. You've been here, you've been yapping, hearing all our yapping. And of course, we'd like to say well done very much to Kemi Tomide Johnson for putting this together. It is not the end of this, but I'm just going to hand the baton over now to Kemi as she gives her last closing speech, but not the ending speech. It is the closing speech. Over to you, Kemi.
Oh God, thank you so much to everyone. I don't even know how much to say this, but we've had a very fantastic session today. We've touched on almost every aspect of domestic violence and how it does impact on families and young people. And thanks to a Better Start South End, that is why we can have this session, the last week one and this one. And I want to say a special thanks to Dr. Ajayi, Dr. Bomo, Peace, Raji, and Reverend Lade for a very fantastic and informative session. Also, I want to say thank you to all our audience who are in the studio with us today, and also to people watching on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you've been able to gain one or two things during this session. But the key thing here that we are saying is that our children are our future. We have the right, we have everything, all the resources to protect them, especially in this part of the world. We cannot continue as business as usual. We cannot continue to do the same thing we've been doing over and over and expect that there will be a result. So if you are, or you know somebody that is in a domestic violence setting or who is going through something, why would you want to keep quiet despite everything you've had today? So we are asking you, come forward anonymously or confidentially. Contact Klimax Family Hub. We'll help you. We guide you in the right direction to get the help that is needed. We currently have about 40-minute session for about 6 people on each week. So you can make good use of this thanks to a Better Start South End, and we get you the needed help that you need. But what is important for us all is to keep protecting one another, to keep protecting our children, to keep together as a family. I'm an advocate I'm an advocate of a healthy family, a stable relationship, a stable union. I'm an advocate of a good marriage. I'm an advocate of good parenting. I'm an advocate for children to progress, to maximize their potential in life. But this can only be achieved in a safe environment, a healthy space. And this is what all this is all about. So please, if you're in the audience or you know someone that needs such help, please do not keep quiet. And I want you to please help me to clap for all the speakers tonight. They've done fantastically well. And we hope to see you again soon. Very, very soon. Can we put this on gallery so I can see everybody's face? I feel like I'm talking to myself. I want to be able to see us and say, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to all our audiences as well. I'm so grateful on Facebook, on here. We say thank you so very much. And I do hope that we've been able to meet your needs one way or the other. I will be speaking to you all soon. Thank you so much and God bless. Have a very, very lovely evening and we hope to see you again. Thank you.
Well done, well done. Still on Facebook. You have to end on Facebook. It's still on Facebook.
Oh, I always forget that.